Prime's exclusive wildcard playoff game is Saturday night. Jordan Love and the Packers take on Caleb Williams and the Bears. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game.
That's going to be caught for the touchdown.
NFC North rivals square off in the latest chapter of the NFL's oldest feud. The Packers and Bears in Prime's exclusive wildcard playoff game. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Only on Prime. Sign up for a 30-day free trial today. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So then I'm doing IT, and when I go to plug the servers in, they become sentient, and they won't let us access our network unless we forward their chain emails and memes to more and more and more people, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant finds and invites best fit candidates to apply, so you can discover talent you may have missed. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 132 of DBR Bites, the Duke Basketball Roundup. It is Thursday, January 8th, and we are about to preview an upcoming big game in Cameron on Saturday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, early evening, against the SMU Mustangs. I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. Jason does not send anything but pictures of where he is somewhere in the savannah of Africa. He has made it over there. He is no longer in a lavatory. Sounds like he's having a good time. But I have Scott Rich with me as well. Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm not sure how many people would have thought when the ACC reorganized that our yearly matchup against SMU would be one of the biggest ones in the ACC calendar. But here we are.
It's a testament to probably why a lot of us were kind of like WTF at SMU being included in the ACC, but why the ACC would go after SMU, because SMU has said, we're going to bring a lot of money and we're going to put a lot of money into these programs. And so far on both the football and basketball side of things, it shows. They've been in the thick of things in the first, again, year and a half that they've been in the conference. But as you mentioned, this game, as we get into kind of the record and what they have, they're a very strong team this year. 12-3 so far in the season, 1-1 in the ACC. They started out 8-0, and they have top 100 wins against Murray State, Butler, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and UNC. Their first game in the conference late last weekend, they beat UNC 97-83, and Boopie Miller took a bunch of people's souls, including Caleb Miller's, in that game. They do have a couple of losses, 3 losses, Vanderbilt and LSU, which, again, no slouches of teams. They both are very, very strong, Vanderbilt especially. And then just last night, we record on Thursday, on Wednesday night, they went to Little John Coliseum, which, as we know, is a difficult place to play, and they eventually lost 74-70 to Clemson. Right now, they're 24th in the AP, 25th in the coaches poll. That will obviously change come Monday, no matter what happens in this game. 31st in KenPom, but 27th in the net, which means this is still a quad 1 game on Cameron Indoor Stadium flooring. So as we get into the metrics, Scott, this is normally Jason's avenue, but it's now your avenue. Take us away on what you see on both offense and defense for the Mustangs.
Our loyal DBR listeners are stuck with a substitute teacher for a few weeks, so Scott will do his best Jason Evans impression. So the thing that sticks out to me most when you look at SMU, beyond the fact they are a solid team across the board, across the metrics. They are good shooting from 3. They are good at shooting from 2. They're good at getting to the line. They are good, not great defensively. All of those things profile as they are a legitimate top 30 team. This is not a flash in the pan. The thing that sticks out to them is they are very, very reliant on not only Boopie Miller, but on their starting lineup. Their bench plays just 21.2% of available minutes, which is 357th out of 365 D1 teams in the country. They play their bench among the 10 least teams in the country. So they have talent, but it is concentrated talent. It's not just Boopie Miller, and we'll talk about that more when we go into the players, but this is a team that plays a 5 that they really like, and they attack with that 5, and they ride with that group. One of the new stats that's getting, the new darling of the analytics community is this 2-point distance statistic. How far away from the basket are a team's 2-point shots? Interestingly, despite the fact that this is a team that does shoot very well from two, they have one of the worst metrics in this measurement. They take, on average, their 2-point shots are about 6 feet away from the rim. So that means that this is a team that does take mid-range shots. They are going back to the retro style. They have not taken the mid-range out of their game like a lot of new coaches like Duke and John Shire try to preach. Boopie Miller is one of those guys. When you watch this team, they are very comfortable taking those curl shots, the whole Rip Hamilton, that Donald, you and I love. Going back to we got to make a Pistons reference since we're the only ones on the pod today. So that is something that is very much a part of SMU's game. The other interesting thing about this team is that if you look at the raw metrics, if you look at Ken Palm's height metric, they're not a particularly tiny team. But when you dig into that more, that's a little bit skewed by the fact that there's a 7'2" behemoth eating up the paint. Boopie Miller is their engine. He's 6 foot tall. Besides the 6 foot guy and the 7'2" guy, SMU plays a lot of interchangeable guys that are classified as wings in that 6'4" to 6'6" range. So outside of one really good, and we'll talk about him more, center, a guy that's, I think one of the surprise players in the ACC this year, they really don't have Duke's positional size. That's something that is going to, I think, show up when we talk more about these individual matchups. That is where Duke can potentially take advantage. They're a team that plays fast. Their average possession is just 15 seconds. They're 30th in the country. You think of fast-paced teams in the modern game as shooting a bunch of threes. That's not the case for SMU. Only 34% of their shots are from deep. Contrast that with the teams we just played, Louisville and Florida State. Both those teams are on the high end, shot more than 50% of their shots from three. 34% for SMU. That's actually towards the bottom of the country again. So this is a weird combination of a fast team that tries to focus on 2-point shots. And based off of that 2-point distance metric, they're actually going for those mid-range shots a lot more often than your typical fast modern offense.
And they go after runners, right? Those ones where Boopie Miller kind of dribbles into the lane and he does like a floater, or as you said, pulls up right at the free throw line. They have a lot of that. And it's funny when you look at a team that goes fast in this day and age, it's usually to get dunks or 3-pointers. And the fact that they shoot so well from two and take a lot of twos, this is like the opposite of the last two games that we've seen where we just faced a Florida State and a Louisville team that shoot basically nothing but threes. And we're pretty good at shooting threes against us, except for Louisville in the second half of that game. So it's funny because, Boopie Miller's their engine, but it seems like all their guys are very, very content with taking 10 to 12 to 15 footers, maybe even top of the key. Take us, I used to do this in high school. Pump fake at the 3-point line, take a step right inside the line, and bury a long two, a Kyle Singler two. That's something that's kind of been, excommunicated from the game on all levels, but it's still a very effective shot. And SMU is kind of digging into their nostalgia bag to have that kind of game on a whole team level.
The last thing you note from the advanced stats is that even though there are some secondary big players on this lineup, there are two solid freshman bigs who we'll talk about on SMU's bench. They rarely, if ever, feel comfortable putting them, either of those bigs, alongside their star big, Igutulu. I looked it up. I practiced the pronunciation, and I still decided to butcher it. They play two bigs on the floor over their last 5 games, only about 15% of the total available minutes. That means that the nominal power forward, the guy who you think is going to be guarding Cam Boozer, is at best going to be 6'6". He's going to be a big, experienced 6'6" when we talk about these guys. But very much like the matchup against Louisville, either Cam or Pat will in all likelihood be guarded by someone who does not have the size on paper to match up with them. There are mismatches to be had against this SMU team based upon the lineups they are putting on the floor recently.
And, I think the last thing before we take a quick break is as you mentioned, they don't shoot a lot of threes, but they are decent at making them. They have a couple of guys who will take threes and knock them down. And the one thing that I think is crucial is they have a couple of guys who we'll talk about who can get to the line and they make their free throws. The 77.4% free throw percentage. Jason and I talk about this all the time. 75% is like great. You would love to have a team shoot 75% from the line. If they're shooting 77 to 80%, that's excellent. So this is a team that you don't want to foul because they will make you pay at the free throw line. So the idea is to guard them without fouling. Now, who are these players we're talking about? We got to save something for the other side, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about that, things to watch, and also dip a little bit into the transfer portal for football. Duke is working hard, and they have gotten a lot of players. We will talk about all of them after this.
All right, folks, new year, bigger goals, no time to cook? Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the shopping or the cooking.
Factor meals are always fresh and never frozen meals that are ready in about 2 minutes. No prep, no stress. With over 100 rotating weekly meals, including options like high protein, calorie smart, or even a Mediterranean diet, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Plus, the new Muscle Pro collection supports strength and recovery, and they're delicious, which is the most important part.
Yes, it is, Donald. Hey, folks, head to factormeals.com/DukeBB50off. Again, use that code DukeBB50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for a year. That offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthy eating easier with Factor.
All right, we are back. We continue our preview of the SMU game coming up on Saturday. That game being one where, again, as we look at it, Duke undefeated in the ACC, SMU, a team that's on the rise but are 1-1, and just like Louisville, you kind of have a chance to put some separation between us and them by gaining another game in the standings. But we look at some of these players. Scott, again, I turn back to you. I'm just going to lead you with this. Boopie Miller is the reigning ACC Player of the Week. He has always been a menace since he has been not just at SMU, but also when he was at Wake Forest back in 2022-23. He is no stranger to the ACC, and this is a really, really good player. But tell us about him and some of the other players that will be surrounding him on the floor.
Boopie Miller is the type of guy who, if he wasn't at SMU and was at a Blue Blood, he would be a name on everyone's list for potential All-American, all of those types of, awards and recognitions. He's an analytics darling. He's 81st in the country as a player basis and offensive rating. He's 77th in true shooting percentage, 51st in assist rate. This team runs through him. He has a 25% usage rate, which means that the ball ends in his hands either with a shot or with a turnover on 25% of SMU's possessions while he's on the floor. He also has a 33% assist rate, meaning that when he's on the floor, of all the baskets that he doesn't make, he's assisting on 1/3 of them. That means more often than not, Boopie Miller is putting his fingerprints on the offensive possession for the SMU Mustangs. You mentioned before the break free throw shooting. He gets to the line extremely well. He's one of the top 150 or so players in the country in free throw rate, and he shoots at a 92.5% clip. That's the type of number that you normally think that's a small sample size. That's not a small sample size when a guy's getting to the line as much as Boopie Miller does. If you foul him, he makes you pay. He also shoots great from deep. He shoots 42% from deep, but he's not actually shooting at a huge volume, which I think is very interesting. Despite that 42% from deep number, he's only taken 73 threes on the year. Just for a reference point, our own Isaiah Evans has taken 108. You don't think of a guy who's shooting 42% from three as taking 30 less three-point shots than Isaiah Evans. That's an interesting wrinkle. It'll be interesting to see how that develops over the course of ACC play.
Yeah, and I think just from the, you mentioned all the metrics, which is fine and dandy, but as you know, I'm a fan of the eye test, and this man is going to, as we said in NFL or in college football, if someone's going to play in the NFL, they're playing on Sundays. This man should be playing on Sundays. He should not be playing for SMU right now. He is a really, really good player. And the fact that he is able to do all that while commanding so much attention, like he is the number one guy on everyone's scouting report when SMU comes to town, and he's still able to put up 20 points and 7 assists, along with 4 rebounds and 2 steals, and shoot great from 3 and shoot great from the line. I think the one thing that what that means is, because the ball is in his hands a lot, he does turn the ball over a lot. And I think SMU is willing to live with the fact that he'll average 7 assists a game, but also average close to 3 turnovers a game. They're cool with that as long as it doesn't exacerbate itself to the rest of the squad.
But there is a reason why Boopie Miller isn't in the NBA right now. It's because he's 6 foot.
He's 6 foot, yeah.
And
he's not Allen Iverson.
And we know that anyone at that stature faces an uphill battle to make it to the league. And that does feed into some of the ways that Duke might try to contain him. If we put Caleb Foster on him, we're putting someone with 5 inches and a lot of wingspan, who's not the athlete that Boopie Miller is, but has a huge height advantage. If we try to replicate the Louisville defense and put Dame Sarr on him, that is something that Boopie Miller could struggle with. I'm not sure there's been a game this year where the opposition has had the length and the athleticism to do that to him. The other thing that's interesting about that, because of Boopie Miller's stature, and because there isn't a ton of height elsewhere on the lineup, and we'll talk about some of these guys more, is that potentially opens things up for Caden Boozer to see more time, in my opinion. There isn't the pressure to have Caden Boozer have to guard Boopie Miller because of the fact there isn't a mismatch if we cross match and put Caden Boozer on one of these other wings who stand, 6'3", 6'4", that are on the SMU lineup. That's been something that I think Duke fans might have been worried about. Is like, God, what's Boopie Miller going to do to Caden Boozer? I don't think we're going to see Caden Boozer guarding Boopie Miller much, if at all, even if we roll out the same starting 5 that we have with Caden Boozer in it.
So I wanted you to talk about another player, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, BJ Edwards. Because it was pointing out, I was on the ACC press conference with all the coaches, and was asking Andy Enfield about playing in Cameron, and he just kind of gave this. It's another game, but it's Cameron, right? It's the first time SMU, as part of the ACC, has come to Cameron. But one guy that is not Boopie Miller that people should look out for is BJ Edwards. He's the only player in college basketball, and he's the 7th player in ACC history to have 2 triple-doubles in the season, and we're 15 games into the season, so he's already had 2 so far. He almost had a third. And these stat lines that he had for these triple doubles on December 28th against Cal State Fullerton: 21 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists, and 5 steals. Against Arkansas State back on November 21st: 24 points, 13 assists, and 10 steals. That was his triple double. And he, again, I mentioned the one that was very close against Texas A&M on December 7th. He had 9 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists. So tell me about BJ Edwards. What makes him go, and how is he a complement to Boopie Miller?
BJ Edwards sort of is the secondary facilitator on this SMU team. He's a guy who I think on a lot of other teams in the country would be a ball-dominant facilitating point guard. He has a 25% assist rate. That's also top 250 in the country. So again, there's 2 guys on this SMU starting lineup who are really good at getting their teammates the ball in the right spot. The other interesting thing about BJ Edwards is he shoots a lot of threes, but he doesn't actually make a ton of threes. He shoots the second most threes on this team, but he only makes about 30% of them. So if John Shire is going to stick with the Louisville game plan of let's dare there are less good 3-point shooters to shoot, BJ Edwards could potentially be the target of, Ali Khalifa style. We're going to leave you out there. We'll take you taking 4 or 5 shots from 3. That's an interesting potential way to nullify his playmaking ability. If he needs to attack the rim, draw help, draw defenders to get those assists, then let's take that out of his bag and say, we'd rather you make the shot than get someone else the shot.
Yeah. And again, other than Boopie Miller, you mentioned he's the guy that will have the ball in his hands. Of course, SMU does not turn the ball over that much. I think they average close to 12 a game, which if you've studied the Jason Evans index, that's right at the line, right, of what is acceptable and what is not. But it's interesting. They like to live with that, and against Clemson, that happened a lot. A couple of guys would get the ball, they would try to make up a 6 point deficit in one possession. It felt like, and they would turn the ball over. And so it feels like SMU is willing to live with some of that. But again, with our length, with our size, BJ Edwards is only 6'3". This will be an interesting test where, again, we've seen a lot of teams that have very small guards, but SMU has not seen a lot of teams that have very big wings and very big point guards that can guard them, right? You talk about Dame Sarr could guard, 1 through 4, essentially. And so the fact that you could throw a Dame Sarr on there, you could throw a Nick Kaminia who's 6'7", 6'8" on them. You could throw a Caden Boozer who's 6'4" and still looks giant compared to some of these guys. It's an interesting thing. But tell me about a couple other players that you think are going to be guys to watch on this team.
Well, so I want to at least tick through the other 3 starters because, again, SMU is a very starter-heavy team. Jason Pierre is the Robin to Boopie Miller's Batman. He is the primary secondary scorer. The primary secondary scorer. That was a good one. He's a guy who's a transfer. He was at Jacksonville State last year and was one of the leading scorers in the country. He has actually done a good job of translating that element of his game. He's still a very strong scorer. He's not a guy who's going to pass much. He's a guy who is there to score. He shoots a ton. He actually shoots more threes than Boopie Miller, but doesn't shoot them at a great clip. He's a high-volume three-point shooter who's only shooting 33% of the year. He's been on a bit of an uptick recently. He's 4 of 10 in conference play. So it's we can wonder whether that's a bit of a small sample size or not. But he's a guy who, if he's open, he's going to put up the ball. The guy who's going to be guarding Cam Boozer, I would imagine, at the beginning of the game, is Corey Washington. He's 6'6", 190. That's a pretty solid build. It's not a solid build when you're going up against Cam Boozer. So that's going to be interesting. It's worth noting that last night against Clemson, he fouled out very, very quickly. He fouled out in just 17 minutes in his first game in ACC action. That's something where that's a potential, target point. If you're going to foul out and you're that vulnerable to fouls, Cam Boozer's going to take advantage and he's going to go at you hard. Last starter is, last but not least, again, he is a big dude with a name that we need to pronounce correctly, Samet Yigatulu. I think I got it right that time. 7'2", 270. He's a sophomore. He's a real sophomore. He's not one of these, he's only 21 years old. He's not one of these crazy sophomores that's given eligibility by the NCAA. He is exactly what you think he is. He is a guy who makes a lot of his shots. He shoots 63%. He only takes 2s. He has good feet. We saw in the Clemson game last night a few really good examples of him getting the ball in good possession and having some good footwork to get, the ball to the rim with some post moves. He is a stellar defender as well. He's blocked 6% of the shots that are out there when he's on the floor. That's one of the top 150 guys in the nation. He's also a very, very good offensive rebounder. He gets 13% of the offensive rebounds that are out there while he's on the floor. He's a good, not great defensive rebounder. But he's a guy who is going to get a lot of garbage points, get a lot of easy buckets with his offensive rebounding using his frame. The last thing about him that is worth noting, he gets to the line a lot, as you would imagine someone 7'2" would. He is a bad, and I repeat, bad free throw shooter. He is shooting 52% on the year. You do not mind if Samet Yigatulu is going to the line like you do a lot of the other SMU Mustangs.
Yeah, I think, for me, there's a couple final things that I wanted to mention. Is one, you mentioned all these guys, and when you talk about the guys that are playing, mainly the starters, and if they get into foul trouble, Andy Enfield will leave them in because of the fact that he's like, these are my guys, and I'm going to go with them as long as possible. That's how you see a guy foul out in 17 minutes is they keep guys in the game when they have 2 fouls. So that's a perfect opportunity for us to exploit it.
Again, only 8 teams in the country play their bench less than SMU does. It's barely worth mentioning the SMU bench players in an SMU preview because of how little they play. I will say there's some interesting names on the SMU bench that are worth mentioning.
Tell me the one. Tell me the one name.
The one name's Jermaine O'Neal Jr.
Yeah.
Yes, that Jermaine O'Neal Jr. And he was a solid, based off of his pedigree, he was a solid prospect. He was a, top 50 recruit, 4-star guy. He was injured a little bit that sort of slowed his development, but they're trying to bring him along as that sort of backup center. The other interesting name that Duke fans may remember is Sam Walters. Sam Walters is a guy you may remember because he was a key factor in Alabama beating UNC in the Sweet 16 2 years ago. He's 6'10", but has a very, very good three-point shot. He is essentially a 6'10" three-point shooting specialist. He played a decent amount his freshman year at Alabama, had some moments in Alabama's NCAA tournament run, transferred to Michigan last year, never really got into the rotation with some injury issues. Now has been at SMU, had some more injury issues, missed most of the first half of this year, but he's been slowly brought along. He's playing a little bit more of over the last few games, and then potentially is a guy who profiles as who SMU might want to be their sixth man come March.
Yeah, I was going to mention Jermaine O'Neal Jr. And funny enough, out of South Lake, Texas, which is right in the DFW area, is where Jermaine O'Neal made his home. His daughter played at Texas volleyball, and the fact that he is now going to SMU, like this is a guy who, when you see him, you're like, yeah, that's his boy. There's no denying that. You don't need more Povich for that one. The last thing I'll say about the players before we move on to things to watch is that this team is fourth in Division I in experience. There's nothing except for a couple of freshmen that are at the end of the bench. There are, and Jermaine O'Neal is one of those freshmen. Like there's a lot of juniors, there's a lot of seniors on this team that you're going to see on the floor. They have a lot of experience, and that experience couple going up against quite a few freshmen, but at least as opposed to previous years at Duke, we do have some returnees. We have quite a bit of guys who factor in that are upperclassmen. That's going to be the Slim Evans. It's going to be Caleb Foster, Malik Brown. Those guys are going to need to lead the way. Pat Gongba is going to need to lead the way and play a little bit better than he did against Louisville. These are the guys that need to step up with the experience, and also with Cameron, time to get rowdy, ladies and gentlemen. The students are back, so it's time for you to get back into mid-season form.
It is worth noting they are one of the most experienced, oldest teams in the country that has come from the portal. They are not a particularly continuous team, but outside of Boopy Miller and outside of Edwards, they have a lot of transfers. In particular, again, I'm harping on Corey Washington because I think he's going to be the guy who's guarding Cam Boozer. He's a guy who has made his way up the ranks. He was actually at St. Peter's for 2 years. I believe he was part of that St. Peter's run. Last year, he played at Wichita State. Now he's at SMU. If you look at his stats, they have decayed as he has gone up the ladder and played harder and harder competition. It'll be interesting to see how he plays against arguably the best player in the country, because his metrics showed it. Yes, he was really good at St. Peter's. Yes, he was pretty darn good at Wichita State, but he hasn't quite held up to the rigors of playing an ACC level schedule as much as SMU probably hoped.
So as we look at the things to watch, there's a few things that I had in mind. And the first thing is, it's very easy to say contain Boopy Miller. Like that's the easy thing to try and do. It's easier said than done.
We do that, we win, period. It's simple.
Yeah, I can say it.
But it's easier said than done.
But again, this is part of the mentality, right? Cut off the head of the snake, the body will wither. If you are somehow able to contain Boopy Miller, SMU rarely has a response for that. But I think the other thing is, I think one of the more important X factors is BJ Edwards, and you can't let him go off either. The fact that those two guys are able to play well off of each other, even if Boopy Miller does have a bad game and you let BJ Edwards get close to a triple-double, that means he's contributing in a lot of ways, and you want to be able to mimic or limit what he's able to do. You mentioned the mismatches down low and the fact that we could easily have a situation where there is a mismatch with either Cam Boozer on offense or Pat Gongba on offense. Exploit it. Like those guys are there for a reason. If you see the big guy and there's no big guy next to him, give it to the big guy that has no big guy next to him, right? Make them have to rotate and make them have to figure out, how do I get the ball out of both of these guys' hands? Because I think, and I think that's also going to open up the floor as well for three-pointers, open looks at the basket, or even guys crashing and going towards the lane. The final thing that I have is a very simple one. And again, easier said than done, but I'm going to say it anyway. Scott, you and I talked about the second half of that Louisville game and the tenacity that that team showed that we saw in the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season. And we need that to continue. This is the trend that needs to start, for that tenacity to be present. It's going to be obviously helpful that we have the Cameron Crazies back, that we're back in Cameron. It feels like a while since we've been in Cameron, and it's the only game that we have in Cameron for another couple weeks because we go on a long road trip to the other Atlantic Ocean coast to next week, right, for 2 games. But I want this team to understand that this is what's needed, that tenacity, that mentality, that intensity. And SMU is going to, they're recovering from a loss and they don't want to have another one before they go back to Texas. They want to bring it against Duke, and they are not going to be afraid, right? Because they just played UNC and made them look silly at times and beating them by 14 and scoring almost 100 points. We need to make this game. If this is a game that we can limit SMU offensively, when we're on offense and we can make our shots, this can be a game that we can win. And I think this is a prime opportunity to go through a very tough week 2-0. But to do that, we got to play our game, and we got to play with that tenacity that we had against Louisville. Again, that game, 2 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. There is a game on beforehand, so if you're setting the thing for 2 o'clock, just know that the game might start on ESPN News or the ESPN app. Check your TV, check your feeds on that. Scott, last word to you on this particular game.
Duke has to exploit the things that are very obvious about SMU. SMU is shallow, exploit it. SMU likes to take mid-range jumpers. It's a lot harder to take mid-range jumpers against a guy who's 5 inches taller than you and has a stellar wingspan. Those are things that Duke can do. Duke has very obvious clear mismatches and clear advantages. It's as simple as hammer those home. Give Cam Boozer the ball every time he's got a mismatch. Give Pat Gongba the ball every time he's got that mismatch. Period. End of story. Duke does that. Duke wins.
It's simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. That's the easy way to end the preview part. We do want to shift gears before we get out of here to the gridiron because, as I mentioned at the top, Duke football is killing it right now in the transfer portal. They so far, it seems like every hour they're getting another guy through the portal, and it's credit to Manny Diaz and his coaching staff for working the portal very hard and knowing they're going to lose players both to the NFL and even some guys to the transfer portal. I will say we mentioned Henry Beelan, the 4th entering the transfer portal last week. This week we've lost Chase Tyler, who's already committed to Wake Forest, so we'll see him next year, and Quayshawn Brown, Queso, which was probably the dagger. It was one that a lot of people wanted to keep around. I thought he would have been great with us next year with the guys that were returning in Cooper Barkate and one of the guys that I'll talk about in a minute that's coming in. Having him in the slot would have been incredible, but at least we'll have the Tony the Tiger Sunbowl image of him diving into some Frosted Flakes after scoring the game when he touched down. Queso, we will miss you in that regard. But for the guys that are leaving is one thing, and there's 13 guys in total that we've lost, but we have gained 11 through the transfer portal, and they're guys in positions of need. Braden Miller on offensive line, Braden Miller from Cal, Nick Del Grand from Coastal Carolina. We recruited a backup quarterback, Ari Patu, who comes from North Alabama by way of Stanford. Running back, C.J. Campbell Jr. from Rutgers. We got the wideout that I mentioned, Jared Richardson from Penn, the best in the Ivy League. And, last year we got the best guy in the Ivy League. His name was Cooper Barkate. That turned out pretty well. And I think Manny Diaz dipped back into that well and said, give me another one. Louisville, their tight end, Nick Kuriski, is coming to Duke as well. And again, paired with Jeremiah Hazley, that's going to be a great thing for Darian Mensah to have a lot of these guys around him that could go. Nate Shepard said he was coming back just like today. So the fact that we have some of these star guys that are staying, we're adding some guys on the offensive side from the portal, I think is great. On defense, there's a couple of guys I want to mention that we have gotten. Owen Waffle from Penn State, a defensive lineman. Again, Wesley Williams declared for the NFL draft. He did play in the bowl game. He mentioned that he was going to stay, play in the bowl game, and then leave. He has done that, and we wish him well in the NFL. He's a guy you're going to see, I think, play on the trenches for quite a while. But getting that back up, getting that to shore up our defensive line is great. Keon Loud, a defensive back, a center back from Montana. He's considered the best defensive back in the football college subdivision, FCS.
Football
Came from
championship subdivision.
oh, excuse championship football championship subdivision,
Because
and
the FBS teams don't play for a championship. The name makes so much sense.
oh, they do now. Thank God for the college football playoff. Go Miami. This game has not happened yet. But yes, the best guy in FCS, the best defensive back, is coming to Duke. I think that's great. Patrick Smith Young, who is a safety from North Texas, and Dylan Flowers, a quarterback from Western Kentucky, all committing to Duke through the portal. And then last but not least, and again, this is going to change because it seems like there's still a week left in the transfer portal, and Duke is working actively in it. But the last guy that is committed within the last couple of hours is John Morris, a linebacker from UConn, whose brother is Duke linebacker Nick Morris. You may remember Nick. He tore his ACL last year. He came back. He was having such a great start to the season and then broke his leg in September during that NC State game. But he obviously has a year of eligibility left, and now he gets to play in the trenches with his brother. I think that's great to see. John Morris was on the other side when we went to UConn to play them back in November. Now he will be joining Duke to play with his brother. Scott, your thoughts on the transfer portal at large, at least within Duke? We're not going to talk about DeMond Williams or anything else that might be happening that is noteworthy.
Yeah, no, I mean there's chaos across the country that could fill a whole episode of random musings. I think it's so fascinating that one of Duke's primary targets was a tight end, even with Jeremiah Hazley coming back, combined with Nate Shepherd returning. You have to wonder if Duke wants to get a little bit bigger, have some more two tight end sets, and lean more into play action with Nate Shepherd. Offensive weapons should want to come to play with Darian Mensah, right? That's not surprising. But having the ability to go to 12 personnel, have two tight ends in there, and basically say, okay, you have to respect both Darian Mensah and these tight ends options, but also have to respect Nate Shepherd at the same time out of the same formation. That's been something that the more spread offensive Manny Diaz hasn't done quite as much over the last few years. I wonder if that's a purposeful wrinkle to say, hey, we've got Nate Shepherd back. We've got Darian Mensah back. Let's double down and let's make opposing defenses have to respect them both via more play action in this offense.
And it's a more NFL style of offense. If you look at the NFL today, you see a lot more of these two tight end sets, what used to be called jumbo sets. But it's also guys that are big that can catch the ball and have these faint offenses where it looks like they're running, but oh my God, this blocker that I thought this 300 pounds turns out to be a guy who can catch the ball and run 15 yards downfield. Also will help in third down and fourth down situations, those short situations where you need an extra guy on the line that can block and pass protect, but also in a pinch can turn around and catch the ball in a bubble screen and get the first down or the touchdown. This is going to be, it opens up a world of possibilities. And like you, I agree that with Nate Shepherd coming back, it means that Manny Diaz is like, feed that man the rock. And let's see what he can do, and let's see if we can get 1,000-yard rush, be a 1,000-yard rusher out of Nate Shepherd. Because to have a 1,000-yard rusher to complement a 3,500-yard passer and Darian Mensah, like that is a world of offensive firepower. And the one last thing that they might be going after, I think they're going to continue to try and shore up both the offensive and defensive line. But with Queso gone, as I mentioned, it kind of opens up a position at the slot. Now they may be. There might be someone waiting in the wings there. I thought that would have been Chase Tyler, but he's also gone. And I wonder if there's either a guy that's coming in via the freshman class, the high school class that's being recruited, which is a very solid one, or if they're going to try and see if there's a wide receiver out there that can be in the slot and get those, for me and for you, those Jamison Williams type of yards, right? Like that kind of guy. That's what Queso was set up to be. And unfortunately, he probably won't be here to do that. But I do think that there's an opening for somebody to be in that slot when you have the guys going wide and you have that slot coming in the middle that's going to be open all day, especially in those sets where you have Nate Shepherd going out and you have a tight end also going out. That slot receiver is probably going to be forgotten. If they decide to remember him, that means they have to forget about somebody else. Somebody's going to be open that gives so much time for Darian Mensah to pick his spots and throw the ball. So it's exciting times. The transfer portal is chaotic, but I'm really, really happy at the additions that we have gotten so far, and it doesn't feel like that Duke is going to stop anytime soon.
Come catch the ball from Darian Mensah is a very, very powerful recruiting pitch. And I think that's something where, there's going to be more and more chatter as we get into, silly season way too early rankings of, oh, hey, this Duke team that won the ACC is also returning probably one of the best experienced quarterbacks in the country. And they've got a bunch of stuff. They got a bunch of talent. If their name wasn't Duke, then we might be putting a little bit more respect on their name. It's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out and what the national perception of this Duke team is based upon the upward trajectory we had at the end of the season.
And because we're the defending ACC champions next year, and we do have that target, as Nate Shepard has said, as Cooper Barcade has said, and Theory Mensa has said in their messages saying that they were coming back to Duke, it's time to run it back. And I think this team is poised to run it back, and that is part of the recruiting pitch. Hey, we're the defending ACC champions. We're trying to run it back. Why don't you come run it back with us? And a lot of guys so far has said, that sounds like a mission that I want to be a part of, and I'm glad for that. We're going to leave it here on this episode of DBR Bites. Scott, thank you as always for joining me. We'll see you on the other side of the SMU game. We'll record at some point this weekend. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Get your headlines in after the game is over. But until then, for Scott, I am Donald. Jason's somewhere off in Africa, and this is the Duke Band. They're not in Africa. They're playing us out, and they're taking us home.